Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, welcome to part 16 of the A-6 Intruder build. Now that we've got sort of the main colors down, it's time to go in and get some of these last details picked out. I'm starting with the gear bays, which have received a little bit of overspray. And so we're going to come back and clean those up. Now, should I have just masked these off? Probably. Considering the amount of tape that I got to use to make sure they're isolated from any overspray issues. Yeah, that might have been a good call. But here we are. Alright, now that the gear bays and the crew ladder areas are sorted out, we're going to put a little bit of MRP steel in the exhaust and heat shielding areas. Still have to do the actual exhaust cans, but we can get to those. And my big fear here is overspray. Okay. Cool. Time to pause and unmask. We'll be back. Okay, so here's everything unmasked. We've got the gear bays all nice and clear doped linened, and we've got the exhausts hit with the MRP steel. We'll weather those up nicely when the time comes. Yay! Okay, so taking a little break from the actual Intruder itself, it's time to paint the yellow stripe on the AGM 123. Now, masking these sort of conical sections is always a huge pain in the ass. So instead of trying to do that, I just grabbed a 1/4-inch circle from a Ushi circle template and kind of jammed it over the front, and then just masked off the back so that any overspray, because we're going to be spraying sort of down onto it, basically just masked off behind it just to protect from shit going crazy. To paint it, I'm going to be using orange yellow, using the PS771. MRP's yellows tend to cover quite well, so that's interesting. Now the cool thing about the 123 and the way that this particular resin assembly works is that the seeker head and front fin unit just kind of slides over the bomb itself. Okay. Set that aside, let it dry. And I'm going to clean the fucking airbrush. So one of the things I'm tackling in this sort of hazy pre-markings stage is the tires and wheels. Now the kit tires are rubber, which is bullshit, so I have secured a set of res kit resin ones, and the detail on these things is phenomenal. However, there's always the typical fun of removing wheel hubs and, to a lesser extent, tires from their resin pour stubs. These all came basically with a flat pour stub on a little pad. Sanding around is always a pain in the ass, or cutting around is always a pain in the ass. So cutting it out, shaving and filing it smooth, and then discovering when I went to go drop them into the actual wheels, and I've been sanding on this one, but it's still close enough to the original that you can see how proud they sit. Lovely. So, with all the other ones, I've basically used this sandpaper and a lot of effort and a lot of expletives to get them much more down to size. The result that everything mostly fits now. And certainly fits close enough that, when we hit glue and things like that, it should look fine. So to do this, obviously sanding and keeping stuff in true at the same time is a pain in the ass. Usually when I sand, I end up with like a 5-degree angle or something like that. So to prevent that from happening, what I'm doing is literally just grabbing this thing, moving it like this, doing a little bit of sanding, right? Turning it 90 degrees, more sanding, turning it again, doing even more sanding. And so by constantly sort of shifting the angle of sand and doing this on a flat surface with flat sandpaper, keeps us more or less where we need to be. And then very gradually decreasing the amount that this thing is sitting proud by. You are not getting stuck in there. What I thought. Alright, look at that. Awesome. Now the other fun thing that I'm going to face, let's go and get this guy out of the way. The other fun thing that I'm going to face with the landing gear is the absurdly short axles / wheel mounts. So on a main gear leg, for example, it is this. That's it. Just this little thing. And problem is if you compare, this end stub right here, and hell, let's say we want to widen it out and have it go all the way back to this, sort of third thick, the thickest ring down here, so it would have the first two seat on it. Well, they are nowhere near the right size, not even close. So I'm going to have to come in here with a rather substantially sized drill. I mean, that looks like more than 3 millimeters maybe, and basically burr this out. Yay. And then up front, it's even worse. You can look how short and stubby those things are, and then consider, I believe this is the one that we get to work with. And so basically I just need to drill that out. I don't have to go as big, but that is not a lot of room to mount something on, and so getting these things to mount nice and flush is going to take probably epoxy and a lot of bracing. But at least I've got all these damn things shaved down now, so let's see, we can do. So, mostly decent fit. So there's one, there's two. Oh, and I cut myself and then bled on the resin. So that was fun too. And then we've got one nose wheel, two nose wheels. Now the nose wheels were nowhere near as overly thick as the main wheels. So that's that. Now I'll be able to prime these and all that good stuff. Probably hopefully paint the hubs at the same time I'm doing this. At the same time though, first I need to go in here and drill out these holes to make sure that everything will fit nice and snug when the time comes. So let's get out the drill press. Okay, in the slog of gear doors and other associated tedium, it is time to make the crew ladders. I've already got one of these assembled over here, basically proof of concept. So now we can walk through what this takes. So first we've got these awesome little photo etch railings that need to go in place. And they are slightly a pain in the ass. Holy fuck. I did not just do that. I just dropped the gear door in CA. Hold please. Okay, well that was fun and completely fucking stupid. But I managed to get it off thanks to this super solvent, which is a great debonder and CA remover. So, let's get back to where we were. I want to double check that this thing does indeed fit where it needs to go. One annoying thing with these is Trumpeter put a little sprue fret gate thing on the inside radius, where they are a gigantic pain in the ass to remove. I think we got it. Alright. Because I dunked it, we're going to get a little bit more CA so we can work effectively. Set that there. This part is kind of a pain in the ass. One side. Okay, so we'll leave that for the opening salvo. Now we've got to install this little thing right in here. nice and easy. I'm going to switch up to PVA, because I'm using Ammo's Ultra Glue, which does a nice job of things. Top step goes up top. Just like that. Now, as you can see, this has a bend line in it, sort of right there underneath the little dots. And I was bending it originally I was bending it in on the fold line because that's the way these usually work, but that's a great way to limit yourself to 90 degrees. And these things need to be bent a little bit more. So that, now this is really tough, thick PE, so you can kind of cheat and do pliers bending without worrying about fucking it all to hell. Little dollop of PVA on those little teeth on either side to hold it. And we just install. So I think the key takeaway with these is, as long as you go slow and take your time, they are a lot scarier looking than they are to actually do. Thankfully, Trumpeter provides pretty good guides on the side here for those two central frames. That could be where everything goes off the rails. Bending the steps is tedious, but it's not at all what I would call difficult. There's that one. Now we've got two happy step ladders. Okay, so all the various doors and things have been primed in black. Now it is time to start painting them, and we're going to start with the outside because it's the easiest part to mask. And they're all light ghost gray. Well, except for the crew ladders, which are half light ghost gray and half dark ghost gray. These don't matter all that much because a lot of this is just honestly going to be hidden, tucked up right against the underside of the wing and all that good stuff. So, okay, so where I put the dividing line on the crew ladders doesn't really matter because they're going to be facing inside against the interior of the ladder bay and the intakes. And so a little bit might be visible on the underside, but you're not going to see it directly lined up with the intake or any of that kind of stuff, so I just kind of picked a point and went with it. Okay, I'm going to clean out the airbrush, give these a few minutes to dry, then I'm going to tape them up, and we will come in here and paint the edges, and in the case of the crew ladders, the whole thing. Probably start with a yellow to sort of warm up the red, and then we're going to paint red and get this all nice and shiny and happy. Okay, so shit has now been masked, and it is time to start tackling the edges. This is going to be fun. I don't want to get bleed under here, so I've got things taped off, and I've got the air pressure down nice and low. And we are spraying some MRP 142 orange yellow. You know what? This is building opacity much slower than I would like. I don't want to have to flood the zone. So we're going to call an audible here. First up, and I assume this will also help with any bleed under, we're going to go with some light ghost gray again. Well, light ghost gray that is mixed with the mixed with the shit in the cup. By the way, fuck the Navy and the Marines for doing this red trim on the door bullshit. It's very annoying to deal with. Alright. Alright, back to our orange yellow. There are a lot of angles on these ladders to spray, that's for sure. Alright, it is now time to change gears and paint some Mr. Color 327. This is their insignia red. Now, I'm using Mr. Color instead of MRP because I'm honestly just not that big a fan of the MRP reds that I have. I believe this one is sitting out there somewhere, but it's not in my collection. And these Guns reds are pretty gorgeous. That's a pretty nice vibrant red we're getting. Okay, so I've got a bunch of red laid down on various bits and pieces. Exciting. And stars of the show, crew ladders. So pretty good. I think they do need a little bit of cleanup on this side. Let's see, there's a little bit of spray through right there. That'll be very easy to deal with though. I might even be able to sand it away. If not, little shot of black, little shot of dark ghost gray actually in that area. But other than that, it looks pretty solid. So I'm going to give these overnight to set up, then we will mask again and spray some black to get rid of the red, and then we will come in and do the white. Okay, so now that the red is down on everything, I've been through a bit of masking hell with the main gear doors. Fortunately, they don't really matter on these because one side is red, one side is not. However, I've got a few little oops areas there. You can see one right at that angle that need to be addressed. So I've loaded in some MRP medium gray. They call it navy gray blue. And I'm just gonna very carefully basically treat this like a paint touch-up. A little bit more than I would like, but good enough. Okay, now to do cover work on the red, I'm going to use some chestnut brown, MRP 166. Get a nice warm tone in there. It'll be dark enough to cover this, but that won't turn any future white type stuff cool on me. Now the reason I haven't masked all this and the reason that I'm fairly confident it'll work is if you hold these at an angle, you can spray and not get shit on the edges. I've just masked off the edges that are going to be really tough to avoid doing that on. See, it's covering the red, and we've still got that nice edge. Set that one over there. Actually, I can get a little bit more of this. This one I need to be careful on. I think it's almost too small to mask. So we just have to... be shrewd about the angles. Helpful. Okay, shit's been painted. Now it's time for clear doped linen to go over the chestnut brown. I will not lie, I am quite ready to be done with these doors, at least with the masking and all kinds of bullshit painting stage. Wouldn't mind getting onto weathering. I'm going to slide that over here because that's kind of boring. Okay, just got done spraying all the white, so it's time to go ahead and take a bunch of masking off. Always the fun part, right? Get ourselves a red border. Good enough for government work. Not quite perfect to the edge, but it's more the front and back that I'm concerned with on these, and that looks great. Hey now, wait your damn turn. Alright, these fuckers were the biggest pains in the ass. Looks like on this one I do a little bit of overspray right there. That is some overspray I can live with. Got to fix that little yellow shit there, though. Alright. So, we have the nose gear doors. Got these floppy fuckers for the forward main gear. And these giant ones for the aft main gear. All looking good. And while we were in there, I went ahead and sprayed the gear struts again. So they're a bit beaten up with basically 2 different shades of white on them at this point. One thing I will note is that these gear legs are metal, and so I've been working on removing the seams, but it's a giant pain in the ass to do that and maintain some level of detail and things like that. So those are also a matter of conservation of fucks to hold on for the rest of the build. Okay, so now that those are knocked out and we've got the crew ladders all sorted and all that stuff, it's time to go back to the wheels and get these damn holes drilled so they can actually mount onto the main gear struts. Alright, next up on the hit list is drilling out the wheels. I've already mentioned that these are going to be a pain in the ass because the little stubby ass axles on the main gear and especially on the nose gear, literally that's what it mounts to, that little nubbin sticking up right there. Any further than that, it starts pushing down and interfering with the rest of what's going on here. So basically I need to drill out some holes so that I can mount these effectively and all of that. Now to do that, I'm gonna just quickly verify the measurements. I've got these in decimal inches right now. These guys are 0.052 inches, which should correspond nicely to basically somewhere between this 0.051 and 0.531. And these bigger assholes are 0.155. So 0.155 we have nicely on this much larger bit set at this number 22 size. So the reason I want to use these carbide bits is they have that same 1/8 inch shank that works really well in the drill press. And I'm not going to film drilling these because y'all have already seen me drill out other shit, and honestly moving the camera around to film it is a pain in the ass. So I'm just going to hammer these out real fast. We'll be right back. Okay, we've drilled some big ass holes in the main hubs and some rather smaller ones in the nose wheel hubs. And honestly, it's a mixed bag. I was expecting the nose gear to be a bit squirrely because it's literally mounting again to that little tiny nubbin right there. And sure enough, these are the correct size and they fit, but they are not what I would call tight. So these are going to need epoxy or some other thing just to really hold the shit out of them when they get mounted. Main hubs, on the other hand, it's maybe a stupid little stub, but it's a fat stub. Look at that. Rock solid, no wiggle. Plop a tire on there. Tire still needs to be glued, obviously, but there you have it. Excellent. Okay, while the primer sets on the hubs and the tires, I'm getting ready to go ahead and knock out the exhausts. For these, I'm planning a multi-phased approach here because I love MRP steel, but it's not quite dark enough for exhaust. So I'm adding some AMT 12 to it to mix things up a bit. As well as just a dash of burnt iron. One nice thing about the Intruder is it doesn't have one of those crazy multi-feather exhaust setups the way that a lot of fighter jets and things like that do. It's just got these things. So that makes it a lot easier just to paint them, not have to worry about various heat staining and things like that. They're just kind of uniformly and they're really more of an accent. Okay, next up, it's time to paint the stripes on the rockeyes. Do not want to use decals. So I've got a fairly straightforward system for this. So to start, I take this, whatever width this is, 1 millimeter maybe, I don't know. Maybe 1.5. We're basically going to lay this right along this tape here, which is kind of the forward border. Take the slightly narrower gauge tape. This might be 1 millimeter. I don't know. This other one. That. Take this off, put this on this side. And this is one where, having seen what bomb stripes actually look like up close in reference photos and whatnot, I know they're certainly cleaner on rockeyes than they are on some other things, but they're still not exactly super crisp. Sometimes a little bit janky, so good enough. Get another strip of 6 millimeter, de-tack it a little bit, because this MT washi tape isn't exactly the same level of tackiness as Tamiya or Azu or things like that. It seems to have a little bit more stick to it. Well, basically, just going to follow this along here. That down. And yoink, we have masking for the stripes. So I'm going to repeat that on the other one, and then we'll start shooting some paint. So I've got both rockeyes masked off, ready to paint the stripes. We've got our good old orange-yellow MRP 142 loaded up in the 771. Let's move the tweezers. Then once we take the masking off, we've got striped up rockeyes. Excellent. Alright, I have one more thing I need to do before we call this video a wrap. Okay, so the last little round of stuff to do in episode 16 here is to go ahead and paint these wheels. I'm going to paint them in clear doped linen, that sort of off-white that I've been using for things. So it's a little bit dirtier than insignia white, a little bit warmer, and I think that fits for sort of the grungier state of white parts on a Desert Storm era tram Intruder. Okay. Wheels are looking pretty solid, and so it is time to call this video a wrap. Now, part 16 has been all about painting a bunch of little bullshit. Gear bays, crew ladders, stripes, wheels, etc. When we come back, the next installment, it's going to be time to cut some masks, spray markings, generally get this Intruder looking a bit more varied up than it is right now. Now, the reason that I haven't done that yet, and the reason that I opted to get all this little bullshit out of the way, is A, to get it out of the way, and B, because in about 30 hours from when I'm recording this, the family and I are taking a road trip to Plague Town. Basically, we've rented a beach house for the week in the Florida Panhandle, just to self-isolate and avoid people from a different location, and spend a little bit of time next to the Gulf of Mexico. So because of that, I will be delayed in really kicking off the masking and spraying of markings and things like that, but it also didn't make sense in a really busy week to cut those masks and then leave and not get them done and have them shrink up on me and all that. So the plan is essentially to start those in about a week when I return. Because of that, though, because of a week away from the bench, that video will probably be delayed a little bit because obviously shooting time, it'll take several nights to handle the masks and all that. But in the meantime, I hope that you all are enjoying the build series. I hope you enjoyed a bunch of little bullshit, from tires and shit like that to rockeyes and to the exhausts and all the little shit happening around the Intruder. So, thanks for watching, thanks for keeping up with it, and check you later.